I want to make sure that I don't think if I'd only done that one thing. It was very difficult for me as a child because I failed, I couldn't read, I still can't see numbers very well.
Cher just turned 80, but the road that got her there was far darker than most fans ever realized. She survived 2 marriages that left deep scars, watched Hollywood try to write her off again and again, and after winning an Oscar, found herself selling products on television while people wondered if her career was over.
So it was really, I just felt really, really good about being able to achieve something that seemed so impossible.
I don't know, so far the only awards I've ever gotten, this is my 3rd Golden Globe, and I won Cannes Film Festival. And those are the only awards I've ever gotten or been nominated for, so I mean, that's all that came to my mind.
But the hardest battle wasn't fame, money, or success. It was the fight to save her own son, a fight that is still making headlines today. So how did one woman survive 8 decades of heartbreak, reinvention, and setbacks while remaining one of the biggest stars on Earth? And what parts of her story still bring fans to tears? The scared teenager who had nowhere else to go. Cher's story has always had a sad edge to it. Right from when she was young, Cher was the 16-year-old kid with undiagnosed dyslexia who dropped out of school in California. Her childhood was completely rough. Her mother was a struggling actress who got married multiple times. Cher grew up with absolutely no stability, no money, and no father who bothered to stick around. The only things she actually had were a deep voice and an insane amount of stubbornness that refused to let anyone tell her no. Dropping out of high school with 0 money and a chaotic family life just to gamble everything on becoming a famous singer is a spectacular strategy that usually ends with a job at a diner instead of an Academy Award. In 1962, when Cher was 16, she met Sonny Bono. He was 27. She was a teenager with no plan and no safety net. Sonny was older, confident, and connected to the music industry through his work with legendary producer Phil Spector. Cher moved in with Sonny almost immediately. She had nowhere else to go. In her 2024 memoir, Cher described how meeting Sonny felt like finding someone who would take care of her when nobody else would. But that safety came with a price she would not fully understand for years. Sonny and Cher managed to become one of the biggest musical acts of the entire decade. Their track, I Got You Babe, hit #1 in 1965 and turned them into instant superstars overnight. Cher was only 19 years old and suddenly famous across the globe. The network gave them their own television variety show. They also had a child together named Chastity, who eventually transitioned and became Chaz Bono. To the rest of the world, Sonny and Cher looked like the ultimate perfect couple. They were funny, they were charming, and the public completely ate it up. The Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour ran from 1971 to 1974.
No, really, no. She really does. But when we get on the show, it's nothing but ridicule, you know. So,
Well, from now on, all that's going to change.
You mean that?
Yes, it's going to be ridicule at home, too.
Pulling in tens of millions of viewers every single week. Cher was the tall, glamorous star with the deadpan delivery. Sonny was the goofy, short guy who played the fool. Their chemistry on screen was completely electric. Fans sent thousands of letters, and magazines put them on every single cover. It looked like they were living the dream. Except Cher was not living a dream at all. She was basically living inside a cage that looked like a mansion, and the man holding the key was the same guy cracking jokes beside her on television every Friday night. What Sonny Bono was allegedly doing to Cher behind closed doors would not come to light until she finally told her story in her own words, almost 60 years later. The marriage that nearly destroyed her, In November 2024, Cher released her memoir, Cher, the Memoir, Part 1. The book ripped the lid off everything. She wrote that Sonny had been controlling and tyrannical throughout their marriage. He forbade her from hanging out with friends. He forbade band members from speaking to her or even looking at her. He cheated on her constantly. In one passage, Cher wrote that the only women in their circle Sonny had not slept with were her close friend Paulette, a woman named G, and their son's nanny. But the financial mistreatment was even worse. Cher revealed that Sonny had secretly rewritten her business contracts so that she earned nothing from their partnership. When music executive David Geffen, who Cher was dating after the split, looked at the contracts, he discovered that Sonny owned 95% of Cher Enterprises, with his lawyer owning the remaining 5%. Cher owned 0% of her own career. She had worked her entire life and had nothing to show for it. The contracts Sonny had her sign were designed to strip her of her income and the rights to her own name. The absolute worst moment happened right at the peak of their fame in the early 70s. Cher later wrote about standing on a hotel room balcony in Las Vegas, feeling so completely trapped that she actually thought about jumping. But a sudden realization stopped her. She realized she did not have to end her life. She could literally just pack up and walk away from him. That exact thought saved her life. Cher divorced Sonny in 1975. By the time the legal fight ended, she walked away with nothing but a car and her clothes. Sonny kept absolutely everything else. But escaping Sonny was only the first battle, and the decades that followed would test Cher in ways that nobody could have predicted. The Oscar nobody believed she deserved. After divorcing Sonny, Cher married Greg Allman from the Allman Brothers Band. That marriage managed to last exactly 10 days before their first separation, though they got back together and dragged things out until 1979. They had a son named Elijah Blue Allman. Suddenly, Cher found herself as a single mother of 2 kids, with a completely dead career. The music industry had completely moved on to new things. The era of television variety shows was officially dead. Hollywood refused to take her seriously as an actress because they saw her as a basic pop star and a cheap TV personality. At least, that is what the entire industry kept telling her to her face. Cher proved absolutely everyone wrong. She started taking acting classes and fought her way into serious Hollywood movies. In 1983, she landed a role alongside Meryl Streep in Silkwood, which earned her a Golden Globe and an Oscar nomination. By 1985, she turned in a brutal performance in the movie Mask. Then, in 1987, she practically owned the box office by starring in 3 massive movies in a single 12-month stretch. She did The Witches of Eastwick with Jack Nicholson, Suspect with Dennis Quaid, and Moonstruck, the romantic comedy that completely changed her entire career. Spending years being mocked as a fading pop novelty just to turn around and casually drop 3 massive cinematic hits in a single calendar year is a spectacular way to tell an entire industry to shut up. At the 60th Academy Awards in April 1988, Cher won the Oscar for Best Actress. She showed up in a sheer black Bob Mackie gown that set the internet on fire before the internet even existed. The moment was iconic. The woman that Hollywood had laughed at, the pop singer they said could not act, was holding a golden statue and looking every single critic dead in the eye. 1987 and 1988 were the absolute peak. She had 3 movies, a comeback album, and an Oscar. Nobody was laughing anymore. What made the Oscar win so emotional was that Cher had been snubbed before. Many believed she should have been nominated for Mask in 1985. Her performance as the mother of a boy with a severe facial deformity was raw and devastating. But the Academy ignored her. Allegedly, there were industry insiders who did not want a pop star competing for serious acting awards. Some reportedly gossiped that Cher was just a celebrity playing dress-up. The Moonstruck win was not just a trophy. It was a vindication. It was proof that talent does not care about where someone comes from or what category the world tries to put them in. But Hollywood has a short memory, and the decade that followed would push Cher to the lowest point of her entire career. The comeback nobody expected. After the movie Mermaids in 1990, Cher's acting career completely crashed, and the roles stopped coming. The phone just stopped ringing. By the mid-90s, Cher was dealing with chronic fatigue and health problems that kept her completely out of the spotlight. The Oscar winner, the global pop icon, and the woman who had conquered every single corner of entertainment was suddenly reduced to selling random products on late-night infomercials, hair care, skin care, and fitness equipment. Cher was hawking junk on television like any other washed-up celebrity trying to pay the bills. It was pretty brutal to watch. In 1998, two massive events completely shifted the story. The first one was a total disaster. On January 5, 1998, Sonny Bono died in a skiing accident at a resort near Lake Tahoe at 62 years old. Even after everything the guy did to her, Cher agreed to speak at his funeral. She stood at the podium in a basic black suit and reading glasses, laughing and crying while telling stories about the man who ruined her life and made her career at the same time. She openly called him the most unforgettable character she ever met. The speech was completely raw and heartbreaking, and millions of people watched the whole thing live on television. The second thing that happened in 1998 was Believe. The dance pop anthem dropped later that year and became the biggest hit of Cher's entire career. It went to #1 in over 20 countries and sold more than 11 million copies worldwide. It pioneered the use of auto-tune as a creative effect, a technique that would go on to define an entire era of pop music. Cher was 52 years old. She had been written off, counted out, and left for dead by the industry. And here she was, bigger than ever, with a song that people are still playing on dance floors almost 3 decades later. The comeback was so dramatic, it felt like fiction. But it was real, and it proved that Cher was not just a survivor. She was indestructible. But even indestructible icons have breaking points, and what was happening inside Cher's family was about to bring her to her knees. The battle she could not win. If Cher's professional life was a story of constant reinvention, her personal life was a story of constant heartbreak. Her younger son, Elijah Blue Allman, the child she had with Greg Allman, struggled with substance overuse for years. Like his father, who battled addiction throughout the 70s and 80s before dying in 2017, Elijah reportedly fell into a cycle that Cher could not pull him out of no matter how hard she tried. In December 2023, Cher took a step that shocked the entertainment world. She filed for temporary conservatorship over her 47-year-old son in Los Angeles Superior Court. In the filing, she cited severe mental health and substance overuse issues and argued that Elijah was unable to manage his finances. She was terrified that money coming from his late father's trust would go straight to feeding the problem. The court denied the emergency request in January 2024. A judge ruled that Elijah's legal team had not been given enough time to respond. What came next was a brutal public legal battle between a mother trying to control her kid and a grown man fighting to keep his independence. Elijah's lawyers openly called Cher unfit to run his life. The two sides went into private mediation in May 2024 and agreed to pause the court fight. By September 2024, Cher dropped her petition completely after they reached a private agreement. But that peace lasted about 5 minutes. In April 2026, just weeks before her 80th birthday, Cher dragged him back to court. She claimed his situation was desperate, his mental health was completely gone, and his drug addiction was at an all-time high. The court looked at her evidence and rejected her request anyway. This was the exact part of Cher's life that no music award or movie trophy could ever fix. She could easily reinvent her entire career 100 times over. She could outlast every single critic and doubter in the entire entertainment industry. But she could not save her own son from the same addiction issues that killed his father. That harsh reality is reportedly what still keeps her awake at night. But even in the middle of that pain, Cher did something at the 2026 Grammys that reminded the entire world exactly who she is. The Grammy speech that made the whole room stand up. On February 2nd, 2026, Cher walked right onto the stage at the 68th Grammy Awards to take home the Recording Academy's Lifetime Achievement Award. She showed up wearing a shredded black lace gown, a cropped leather jacket, and shiny boots. The woman was 79 years old. Every single person in the entire room jumped up to give her a massive standing ovation. She immediately looked at the crowd and told them to sit down. Then she delivered a speech that went viral within minutes. She talked about knowing what she wanted to be at 5 years old and being famous by 19. She talked about how rough her career and her life had been. She told the audience she was either a loser or winning an Oscar, and that she was sure a lot of people in the room knew exactly what she was talking about. The honesty hit different. This was not a polished acceptance speech. This was a woman who had been through every possible version of fame and failure, standing in front of her peers and saying it out loud. Then came the exact moment that everyone talked about. Cher stayed on the stage to hand out the Record of the Year award and announced the winner as Luther Vandross. The major issue was that Luther Vandross died back in 2005 and was not even nominated for anything. The host, Trevor Noah, had to run out and call her back to fix the mistake. The Grammys producer later claimed that she had a full briefing before the show started. Some viewers got completely confused, while others just laughed. The singer SZA publicly defended her online. Comedian Ego Nwodim even parodied the whole mess at the Spirit Awards the next month. Cher fans knew exactly what happened. It was just Cher being Cher. Unpredictable, unapologetic, and completely unfiltered. The mistake instantly became the most watched clip of the entire broadcast. 16 days before turning 80, Cher showed up at the Met Gala for the first time in 11 years. She wore a custom outfit that copied her famous 1974 look. The entire fashion world completely lost its mind. Social media got flooded with fans posting side-by-side photos of Cher in 1974 and Cher in 2026. The woman looked like she had barely aged a day. Comments came in from everywhere saying she was basically immortal, that she was a permanent icon, and that Time database records did not apply to her. But beyond the gowns and the standing ovations, what Cher's 80th birthday really means is something much deeper and much more emotional than most people realize. The woman who refused to disappear. Cher is the only artist in history to have a #1 single on the Billboard Hot 100 in 6 consecutive decades, from the 60s through the 20s. That record is shared only with the Rolling Stones, and industry observers say it is unlikely to ever be replicated in the modern fragmented music landscape. She has won a Grammy, an Emmy, an Oscar, and now a Lifetime Achievement Award. She is the only performer in history to hold both an Academy Award and a #1 dance hit. Nobody else has done what Cher has done. But the records and the trophies are not what make people cry when they think about Cher. What makes people cry is the journey. A 16-year-old dropout with dyslexia who met a man 11 years older than her because she had nowhere else to go. A young woman who was trapped in a marriage that stripped her of her money, her autonomy, and nearly her life. A mother who has spent decades trying to save a son from the same addiction that took his father. A performer who was told she was finished over and over again, only to come back longer and louder every single time. When Cher turned 80 on May 20th, 2026, fans all over the world posted tributes online. People magazine put out a massive look back at her entire career. Social media got completely flooded with messages calling her a living legend. But the reality behind the celebration was apparently pretty dark. Sources close to the singer said that even though she appreciated the love, the ongoing situation with her son Elijah was weighing heavily on her. Having a legendary career does absolutely nothing to protect a mother from worrying about her kid. Turning 80 years old does not magically make that fear disappear. Cher basically explained her entire attitude in a single sentence. When people trash-talked her relationship with a guy 40 years younger, she just said they were not living her life. That is Cher at 80. She does whatever she wants, never asks for permission, and loves making people uncomfortable. Reports popped up in late 2025 claiming she wanted to marry the guy around her 80th birthday. Her publicist shut the rumors down immediately and called the story fake. But the fact that the internet completely obsesses over an 80-year-old woman's dating life says it all. She still commands attention wherever she walks in. Do fans think Cher's story is the greatest comeback in entertainment history? Or is there someone else who matches what she has done? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.